All right, we are back. And so now it is time to close this thing out. I want to thank Connie DeSico and Sia Henry for coming on the podcast. I hope that you learned a lot about those young ladies, um, and the work they're doing. I really admire Connie for, as they say, sticking your toe in the water and running for office and staying engaged in the process and helping make sure that not only do we know stuff about these data centers that's popping up everywhere, but just to keep people informed about issues. The organization she works with, started off going after Amazon, and now that Amazon is getting into the data center thing, it just seemed like a natural fit for Connie to be involved with that. And, hopefully, she'll continue to do what she's doing. Same with Sia Henry. Sia, with her organization and the organization she works with, MAPS, dealing with these psychedelic drugs. Hopefully, you will do a little more research into that. I think what she's trying to do with it, because we've been hearing a lot of talk with these drugs dealing with veterans and trying to help them recover. But, to deal with people that have trauma, period, especially Black folks, especially those who are formerly incarcerated. I think, her angle in working with this group is vital. And then her other project, dealing with the Hood Exchange, the group that she started to allow people to travel. She's been very fortunate to be able to have traveled all over the world, and she wants other Black folks to have that experience. And the plan was to get people who were formerly incarcerated to have that experience, but she started off with young folks. And I think that's a group that needs to be targeted as well. Because it's just all about imagination. It's all about broadening your mind and exposing yourself to things. And I think that's a huge problem in this country, that we are not imagining. Not getting into that in a minute, but I just want to thank those young ladies. And both of them are based in the Atlanta area, by the way. It's really, really good to see people in Georgia doing incredible work, as well as everywhere else in the country. That's the beauty of this podcast. Get to talk to people from all over, and I just encourage it. Now, I do have an update about Walla Bugay. Walla did not win. She was in that race with Boafo. I guess that's how I'm going to have to learn how to say his name, Boafo, because he's going to Congress. But Walla was in that race against him. I think she finished fourth. But she's still going to be a Prince County commissioner, Prince George County commissioner. So she didn't lose her job. In some states, you have to give up your job to run for office, like Georgia. And in other states, like Mississippi and Maryland, you don't have to give up your job to run for another office, as long as it's not in the same election year. So at least she'll still be in a position to serve, and I congratulate her for getting out there. There were some circumstances in that race that I won't get into, but she did good. And Um, very, very happy that she jumped out there to run. It was an open seat that hadn't been opened since the 1980s, I guess. Yeah. So anyway, uh, and we're still monitoring some of the other guests that have been on that are running for things, and give you updates as they go along. Uh, Prayers to the people in Venezuela that are dealing with not one but two earthquakes that happened back to back. And like they said, right now, they said the death toll is close to 500 as we're recording this, but they're projecting it to be much, much higher. So, go to, like the International Red Cross websites if you want to help out, that kind of thing. That's always where I guide people to take care of circumstances like that. So anyway, let me just say this real quick, and then I'm going to end it. The Supreme Court came down with some decisions, and next week they'll have some more decisions. They have not tackled or have not shared their birthright decision yet. I am still optimistic that they're going to understand that the 14th Amendment applies to everybody and not just black folks. But, we'll see how that plays out. We saw a lot of 6-3 decisions. And it looks like, now there was one decision that they were unanimous in, and that was this case called Pung versus Isabella County, Michigan, where basically the estate of this guy, Mr. Pung, they owed some money on taxes. And a previous court ruling had said that the surplus that they get from the auction, since they didn't pay the taxes, they put the property up for auction. There was a previous case that said that wherever surplus money, once the debt is covered, because a lot of times, and I know in Mississippi they did it because I worked at the tax collector's office, whatever money they got, they kept it. And so the estate got some money back. Like I said, a previous Supreme Court ruling said that no, it's like once the debt is taken care of, you got to give the extra money back to the estate, right? And so the estate got some money, and they got it at the auction price, and the Pung family wanted the fair market value back. And so a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court said, no, that's not how that works. Since y'all precipitated the auction, then you got what you would get. The debt's been settled, and then whatever was left, you got that back. So they wanted the remainder of, because I think the debt was only like $2,400. And the family wanted the fair market value of the house, which was $190,000. And they sold it for like $76,000, $77,000. So they still got over $70,000 off a property that they had defaulted on the taxes. So they should have just took their ball and ran with it, and that's what the Supreme Court, all 9 of them agreed with that. But there were some interesting decisions. The two decisions that, the one decision there's 2 decisions that Markwayne Mullin will go down in history as winning because he was the plaintiff in both of those cases. I mean, he was the plaintiff. And the one case that's really disturbing people and getting people in an uproar is the fact that they combined two cases, Mullen versus Doe and Trump versus Miot, to, well, I don't know. I had to think about who the plaintiff is and all that. But the reality, the gist of it is that 350,000 Haitians and 4,000 Syrians are no longer under TPS, temporary protective status, which means that as of today, federal government can ask these people to leave. And I don't think Syria is stable. I definitely know Haiti is not stable. But now they're sending these people back to this unstable situation. And of course, the Haitian issue was a big issue because President Trump, when he was running for office at the debate, famously said that the ones in Springfield, Ohio, was eating cats and dogs. Y'all remember that? Remember that stupid thing he said? Well, so that put the Haitians on target. And the thing that's really crazy is that they're kicking these folks out, but they're allowing these South African farmers who are not under any duress. The country is stable, and they're giving them temporary protective status. Now, what's going to happen with them is that now that this decision is taking place, if they haven't already, now these people are going to be moved into the asylum part. They're going to start protecting them because they know, based on the Supreme Court ruling, that the next president, the next Democratic president, is going to go in and kick them all out. Right? That, they shouldn't have been granted the status in the first place because, again, there wasn't any proof of any duress. Whatever proof they had was manufactured. It was a lie. Their country is not unstable. They are not experiencing discrimination. They are not being targeted. These people in Haiti, people from Haiti, these people from Syria, they were. And that's the whole deal about the temporary protected status. It's supposed to allow people to come in, get situated in the United States, and then apply for asylum. Now, hopefully a lot of these people will go ahead and put in their paperwork for asylum if they haven't already. Because the next case, Mullen versus Al Ultralato, says that if you are still in your country and you apply for asylum, you can be rejected. You physically have to be in the United States to file for asylum. And the Border Patrol officers can turn you away, right? If they feel as though they're being overburdened or whatever, which on the border, the southern border of the United States, it's pretty much every day. So that case allows Border Patrol, Customs, INA, whatever, INS, I should say. They can just start turning people around. They can say they want asylum, but if they're not on U.S. soil, they can't do it. So what I'm hoping is that the Haitian folks will go ahead and, if they hadn't started a process already, or the Syrians, then they can go ahead and do that and try to stay that way. But, a lot of them probably can't afford the the legal help or whatever, but I'm sure some people are trying to step in to try to keep him here. So we'll keep track of that, see how that's going to go, right? The other decision that my good friends from Pearson and Pearson brought up was the case with Landor versus the Louisiana Department of Corrections. That was the case with Mr. Landor. He was a Rastafarian. He had dreadlocks. These two guards at the Department of Corrections decided that he wasn't going to have them dreadlocks in the prison. And he tried to explain to him, and he showed him paperwork that he was protected under the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000. And they basically ripped the paper up and shaved those dreadlocks off. Well, now the state of Louisiana, under that law, has given Mr. Landor, has agreed with Mr. Landor to settle. But what Mr. Landor wanted to do was sue the guards that cut his hair. And the Supreme Court said the law doesn't allow you to do that. You can sue the state, but you can't sue individuals. So it's a form of qualified immunity, right, for those officers. That's what the Supreme Court said. And that was one of those 6-3 splits on that one. Now, I think, those are the kind of decisions that you may not like, that with the Landor decision, but that wasn't a political decision. That was interpreting the law. And if we want to change the law, we can amend that RLUIPA. We can amend it. When I say we, I'm talking about Congress. I should say they can amend the law where individuals can be personally liable as well as the state. Then the Supreme Court will challenge, determine whether that's constitutional or not, because somebody's going to challenge that if they do change it. But, that was the case that we had highlighted the last time we had all got together. And so I wanted to update people on that. I was kind of rooting for Mr. Landor on that one because, I couldn't find anything to find out what happened to those officers. It was implied that there was some disciplinary action taken on those officers for doing what they did. But it didn't imply anything about them being fired or, whatever the action was. It wasn't detailed. So, the one thing I want you to understand about this group of folks that are in power now, like in some cases you can, like in the Landor case, it's a matter of interpretation, which is basically what the court is supposed to do. In other cases, you can tell there's some political overtones with it, especially the immigration cases. Pete Hegseth is showing his racist colors every day that he's in office as the Secretary of Defense. Markwayne Mullin, Kristi Noem before him, with Steve Miller directing the band in the background, is showing their true colors. And here's my thing, right? And now we're getting to the point now where Donald Trump killed a bill. Well, he hasn't actually killed a bill, but he was supposed to sign a bill that the House and the Senate passed to deal with the housing situation in the United States, right? Because right now the biggest problem, of course, you're kicking a lot of the immigrants out, so construction has slowed, right? The president has put tariffs on materials. It's raising the price of building the houses, so that's kind of slowed construction down. But now, the other thing is that these corporations, these large investment companies, are buying up properties and paying cash for them. Because people selling the house, they just want the money. And these corporations are coming in and buying the house and then turn around and renting it out. And polling has showed that the majority of the American people want to buy a house because they want to have an asset, right? And it's actually cheaper to own a home, theoretically, because you're paying a mortgage. But it's cheaper to own a home, to have a home in your name, than it is to rent. And I was just listening to somebody talking about rent in New York City, like a 2-bedroom apartment is like $4,000. Downtown Atlanta can get up to about $2,000, but New York, $4,000? It's a lot of money to pay for an apartment. Now, a mortgage in New York is cheaper than, well, it depends on where you stay in New York. I think if you stay on the island, it might be the same. But I think it's cheaper to own a home or a condo or whatever than it is to rent. So the president was supposed to sign that bill. And then literally at the last minute, he said, nope, I'm not going to do it because I want to make sure that people can't vote in this election. He wants the legislation passed that would basically wipe out nearly 70 million Americans. Where did I get 70 million? So with the SAVE Act that he's talking about, it wants you to show ID, right? Multiple forms of ID, not just your driver's license. Because most of us, when we register to vote now, we register, especially with federal elections, we register once we renew our driver's license or obtain a driver's license. You're automatically in the system. And whatever name is on that driver's license is how you're registered. So, some people change their license when they, especially women, when they get married, they change their license so it'll reflect their name, but a lot of people don't. They just renew it. So now the law says that if the name doesn't match, and so you get a birth certificate and the name doesn't match, then you're not going to be able to vote. Now, if you got a passport with your married name on it, along with your driver's license, they can allow you to vote. If everything lines up with the address, all that stuff. But that's a poll tax, because now you're going to have people paying $150 to get a passport just so they can go vote. It was the same like 20-some years ago when they were talking about changing the real ID. A lot of us got passports because we were told that if your state's ID doesn't conform to the real ID law, then you won't be able to get on a plane for a domestic flight. But of course, we had a government that could function back then, and so they negotiated and compromised and all that stuff, and eventually everybody got their IDs. Every state got their IDs up to the standard of the real ID law, and everything is kosher, right? So all you got to do is show your driver's license and get on a plane. Heck, some states you can put your driver's license on the phone and check in that way. But now they're talking about with voting, you got to have multiple pieces of ID. It's crazy. It was a battle already to just deal with the voter ID, right? Excuse me. But now he wants to do that. He wants to end mail-in voting, even though he votes by mail. He said, well, I'm the president of the United States. I can vote by mail. And it's like, okay. But no other citizen gets that privilege. That's what you're saying. The military people won't have that privilege. And they say, no, we're not saying anything about the military. Well, if you're trying to set a time, and that's another Supreme Court case that's coming, right? So if the ballot for the soldier that's stationed in Okinawa doesn't get in time, because California gives you 7 days. And most states are like, if it's postmarked by election day, it'll be counted whenever it gets there, right? Now, in some cases, most of the races are decided by the time that some of those letters will come in. They'll count them, and they will be in the final tally. But as far as, deciding the election may be decided already by the time the vote comes in. If not, then you wait, right? But, California understands that they have millions of people voting. And most of the people like to vote by mail. So they give them a week, just as long as it's postmarked by election day. Within a week of the election, it will be counted. And that's why it took a minute to figure out who was going to advance to the general election. Not the stupid stuff that Donald Trump's talking about, stupid shit he's saying about it's rigged and all that stuff. It's not rigged. And he wants to take credit for he said he called California or something, and all of a sudden Steve Hilton was on the ballot. No. He got enough votes to be in the general election. You, Mr. President, didn't do a damn thing to make that happen. The voters of California decided that Mr. Hilton and Mr. Becerra would advance to the general election in November. That's how that works. You had nothing to do with that. No magical phone call, no magical press conference. You don't have anything to do with that. So, so he decided that he was going to shut down an issue that needed to be addressed so he can do more stuff to try to stop the election. Now, they've already tried to redistrict everything in the middle, in midterm, however you wanted to, it's like it's supposed to be every 10 years, but they wanted to redraw everything before this election. They've got the Supreme Court to approve certain decisions. And now they want to pass this bill to disenfranchise 70 million people at the minimum. Because all these women that get married, they're going to, they change their name. They're going to be disenfranchised because their birth certificate, which not a lot of people keep their birth certificate around, but their birth certificate is not going to match their driver's license if they've changed their name legally. So there's that, right? They're doing all this stuff because they're going to get murdered in the election if y'all show up to vote. And the president is banking on the fact that you're going to show up. So he's trying to do everything he can to alter it. And because it's all about him. Because he said, he's been telling people, if the Democrats get control of the Congress, then they're going to try to impeach me again. But as I've said before, if you don't want to be impeached, don't do impeachable stuff. You know, these no bid contracts. He wants to blame this imaginary boogeyman that magically snorkeled from one end of the reflecting pool to the other with some kind of device to cut the bottom. He said that's why it's peeling at the bottom. No, because when you got up there and had that press conference, you said nothing was going to happen like that. You specifically said that it couldn't be cut. But now the paint is peeling off, the algae is growing, but it ain't his fault. Well, Mr. President, you might be right. It ain't technically your fault because you didn't actually do the work. But the person you hired, it's definitely their fault because they didn't know what they were doing. And instead of opening the process up, you wanted to hook up one of your boys. And that's why they discourage hookups at the government level because of stuff like this, right? And I've seen it. I've seen it up close and personal. We had this one company that was sucking up every state government contract when it dealt with construction. And they had gotten so many contracts that they couldn't do the work. And the minute the state of Mississippi said, yeah, well, we're going to pull this contract. These folks filed bankruptcy. So you had all these projects on hold because one company got greedy because they had a hookup, right? I had even introduced a bill to say that if you got so many millions of dollars in state contract that you can't bid on anything else until you complete a project that'll drop you back below that threshold, right? At that time, I think it was like $10 million. If you got $10 million of state contracts to do projects, that should be enough. Do that job, finish those jobs, and then you can rebid. That way, other people will have a shot at getting a contract, especially some of these black construction companies, right? But, you know, greed is, it's that avarice that makes capitalism terrible, right? And that's all we got going on. We got greed, we got racism, we got all sorts of other isms going on. And that's what's causing the problem. If you can stop people from being greedy, which will be hard, if you stop people from hating, which will be hard, we can move forward. You know, all these people talking about these Christian ideas and all that, and you know, they want the 10 Commandments posted, and every day they violate each one of them. You got a candidate running in Texas where they've mandated that the 10 Commandments is on every wall and every classroom in the state, posted. And he's violated all 10 of them. Now, the murder one I can't prove, but I wouldn't put it past him. But he's knocked out at least about 7. So, you know, we gotta. Miss Henry, when she put her program together for the Hood Exchange in her website, she talks about the imagination problem, right? And she was addressing the fact that, people don't imagine themselves traveling, leaving the country, leaving the neighborhood that they live in. Atlanta has the busiest airport in the world, and some people have never left the city limits. So somebody had said that that was called an imagination problem. They can't see themselves just doing a basic thing like traveling somewhere, going somewhere different than where they live, right? Well, we've got an imagination problem about how government works too. Government is not supposed to be this greedy, racist institution. It's not. It's supposed to be the arbiter of fairness. The government is supposed to be the last bastion for the little guy, to look out for them. Because business is going business. They're there to make money. So you need a referee. There was this famous sports announcer who used to say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And businesses try every day. They're trying to make money every day. So there needs to be an institution powerful enough to keep them in check. And that's what the government is. There are state governments that prefer certain citizens over other citizens. That's been proven throughout the history of this country. And so there needs to be an institution powerful enough to call those states on the carpet and say, no, they're U.S. citizens first. And U.S. citizens should be treated this way. They just happen to live in your state, but they're U.S. citizens first. And they should be treated as such. Right? So you need government to do that. But the government has to be as close to impeccable as they should be. They should be, at the very least, fair and just. But when the government is corrupt, Katie barred her door. It's just everything's out of control. It's chaos. It's insanity, impositions of power. But you, the American people, can change that. Now, I don't know what it's going to take for some people, because, I just get amazed. Like, somebody I went to high school with posted, the Obamas didn't pay the contractors for the library. The Obamas didn't pay anybody. It was like the foundation that was set up to build a library hired contractors, and contractors hire subcontractors. Now, what's going on between the contractors and the subcontractors? Barack and Michelle ain't got nothing to do with that. But I had a high school classmate put on there, a black woman, literally that lived a block away from me, say that was these black folks' fault that these people weren't getting paid. Put it out there on social media and claims to be a Christian. I had a guy come on social media that was an elected official in Jackson. and say that, yeah, they're sabotaging the pool. Antifa is sabotaging the pool. An elected official, somebody that's supposed to be intelligent, competent, is repeating the same bullshit that a man that has no empathy, no contrition is spouting. That's insanity, folks. Because if you talk to these people, you know that it's like, well, he does pop off, he does say crazy things. Hey, that might be an indication that he might not be right for this job. Just because he might agree with you on a particular point. Look, bro, can I be straight up with y'all? I can find people that are homeless that if I talk to them about a particular issue, they're going to agree with me on something. I'm not going to turn around and put them on the city council in my city. I'm not going to elect them mayor of the city. I'm not going to elect them governor of the state. I'm not going to elect them president of the United States. My main focus is, brother, can we get you someplace to stay? Can we get you some help? I'm not going to put them in a position where they're making decisions about my life. That's just real talk. So why do we excuse this fool? Why have we given this crazy person, this person that is not fully human? Because if you don't have any empathy, if you don't have any contrition, if you don't have a soul, you're not fully human. Right? Now, all of us are supposed to have a soul, but a lot of people ain't in tune with it. And we don't need to put them in positions of leadership. We don't need pets of those kind of people in leadership positions. And when I say pets, I mean people that'll do anything to get fed and have a place to stay in that political party. Don't matter if they're black, don't matter if they're white, don't matter if they're Latino, don't matter if they're Asian, don't matter if they're gay, don't matter if they're straight. If you're espousing the thoughts of a fool, then you are a fool yourself. And I'm not voting for you. And I would hope that the majority of the people that listen to this podcast, if not all of you, agree with that sentiment. And if you were inclined, or you have in the past voted for these foolish people, I admonish you to stop, because it is hurting all of us. Not just the people that you don't like, it's hurting all of us. Some of you are feeling that lesson right now, but you have the power to change it. We don't need a president that's committed to tearing stuff up or vandalizing stuff. Yeah, when you put gold plating all over the White House, that's vandalizing it, bro. Ain't nobody approved that. He literally has a gold sign saying the Oval Office. There's a reason why you didn't put a name on the part where the president sits. It's called security. You're just basically saying the terrorists are like, oh, see, it says Oval Office right there. That's where we need to go. Why would you do that? Your vanity is a byproduct of your insanity. You see where I'm going? Just basic stuff. And we got to shut all that down. And we got to learn from this lesson. There's some people who's like, it's amazing that America has lasted 250 years. excuse me, based on the last 10, I understand why they think that way. But all that can change. And you have the power to do that. You can make that change happen. You are the change that you seek. All right, I'm going to end it on that. Thank y'all for listening. Until next time.